Charlotte Mason believed that education is threefold. Every subject you teach involves atmosphere, discipline, and life. That means your attitudes toward that subject, your children learn from those, the discipline of the habits that are cultivated through that subject, and the life-giving, living ideas that are presented as you teach that subject. Today we want to talk about those three aspects as we teach science. Welcome to the Simply Charlotte Mason podcast. I'm Sonia Schaefer. Joining me today is my friend and coworker, Karen Smith. Karen, my go-to person on all things nature study and science. We want to talk today about how atmosphere, discipline, and life are involved as we teach science. So, which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with atmosphere.
Okay, attitudes, your attitudes, the ideas that you have about science, and how that makes and creates the atmosphere of the lesson.
Yes.
What kind of attitudes are you thinking are best?
Well, attitudes that encourage curiosity and exploration and those sorts of things. So many moms, I hear this from moms, they're not comfortable with science. Mm-hmm. Their own science educations were not the greatest, maybe, or they felt lacking, or they just didn't really have that interest as they were growing up. And so they didn't take, all science through high school and into college or whatever their education may have involved. So they're uncomfortable. Sometimes they're uncomfortable because they don't like messes. And science experiments can sometimes be messy.
Yeah.
And so there's that adjustment. You need to let your kids explore.
Or some critters in nature study make them uncomfortable.
That's true. So there are all sorts of reasons why you might be uncomfortable with aspects of science.
So what I'm hearing is in order to turn that habit of thinking around in our own minds, we need to focus on being curious and wondering along with our children.
Yes. And, you have to be careful that your uncomfortableness with the science does not sour your children on science, because it can be very easy for children to pick up our bad attitudes about things. And so you have to be very careful. I've heard moms say, speaking of those creatures that they might not like, a child, oh, Mom, look at this spider
or snake.
Or snake.
Whatever, yeah.
That's fine, dear. I will enjoy it from over here. That's fine to say if you cannot be closer to it for your child's sake, but you can still encourage your child's curiosity from that safe distance for you.
So what would you say to them? Would you say, oh, what colors do you see? Or
yes.
Something like that?
Yes.
Well, don't
and
touch
that's
it.
Interesting. What do you find interesting about it? What do you notice about it? So you can direct their observations. And we all have our fears and our things that we don't like. And it's okay for our children to know that. But you still need to let them explore and not... if your child brings a spider and wants to show it to you, try not to scream and say negative things about it. I'm afraid of that. Don't bring it to me, and that sort of a thing. We all know that that's how it goes. And then our child goes, oh, it must not be a good thing. Mm. And they let it go, and they won't go back to see spiders again, because now they see it through Mom's eyes, not their own. So be careful you don't have your children see it through your eyes in that way.
I'm thinking of another attitude that could permeate the atmosphere here, and that is helping your child, how do I put this? Part of kindness, learning kindness, is understanding that mom gets an anxiety attack around that thing. And so your child is not using it in order to torture someone else. Your child will respect and honor that part of who you are, but also acknowledges that you're doing your best to encourage him or her in her observations within the boundaries of what you can handle. Does that make sense?
Yes,
so
it does.
that whole idea of consideration for others can also be part of this attitude that you're teaching your child.
Yes.
Even though we have a difference in what we are interested in, I will be considerate of you and encourage you to observe and notice all you can, and you be considerate of me, and we will all get along just fine.
Yes, yes, and that's a good way to put it. In that way, you are encouraging each other
Yes.
and respecting each other.
Yes.
Your child finds something of interest in that spider, but you can't be near it. And so your child respects you by showing it to you from a distance, maybe telling you about it, but you respect your child's interest in that object that your child likes. Control your own attitude and your feelings as best you can. Part of the atmosphere for science is that science is such a great subject for encouraging exploration, curiosity, creativity, because there are just so many things in science. There may be creativity within experimentation. Maybe your child has a different idea from what he's been learning. And so he can experiment to see if his ideas hold true. Science is not settled, no matter how much our culture wants us to think that. Science is always changing. That is what science is. As we learn more, what we know, what we thought we knew, may change to something different. And so your child experimenting, making careful observations, questioning what's happening, or why does this look this way and that one looks that way? All of those questions, researching. Maybe they get more books, check them out of the library, or they watch a nature documentary or something like that, that they're doing research on whatever interests them.
And you can encourage that research by, if the children are young and you're putting books on hold at the library, include some with their interest in mind.
Yes.
And if they want to do research on the internet, then make the time to supervise that so
Yes.
they can get on there and do the research. It does take more of your time. It takes more of your own life, shall we say. But it is all involved in cultivating that kind of atmosphere that we want.
Yes. One caution, though. Some children like to ask questions. They like to question things all the time, just for the sake of questioning. And so you want to be careful that you are not allowing them to get bogged down in just questioning everything.
For the sake of
For
questioning.
the sake of questioning.
Okay.
So it's good to question, but make sure that they're not using it as an excuse to delay other things, maybe.
Oh, I see.
or just because they've, for whatever reasons, children do that.
Yeah, you can almost get in a mental loop. Like when they're two and they're always asking why, and they aren't even waiting for an answer.
No.
And they don't stick around for the answer. They ask the question and leave just because it's a mental thing they've got going.
Yes.
So be on the watch for that.
So that would be a caution within the atmosphere. Encourage questioning, but make sure it has its limits.
Okay, that's a good point. That's a good point. All right, so that's the atmosphere and our attitudes as we teach science and nature study. Let's move on to discipline, okay? What good habits can we cultivate through science and nature study lessons?
Well, science by nature is a disciplined study. You can't just willy-nilly set up experiments or just make surface observations if you really want to learn science. So it's already built in. There is a discipline structure to science. Careful observations, making careful note of those observations. When science involves calculations, they have to be done accurately. One mistake in a calculation can throw off the entire result. And you may be following a wrong result and think you have it right, but you made an error in your adding. Controlling the influences when you're doing experiments.
What do you mean the influences?
So you need to have a controlled
okay.
experiment. You need to control for those outside or inside influences so that you can focus as much as possible on the one thing that you are trying to determine. And, how does this affect this? Well, if you don't control the other things that might be affecting that, you're not going to know if the thing that you are studying is what's causing the result.
Or if something else got in there and
Yes.
caused it.
So just science itself is a very disciplined study.
So I'm hearing habits of observation, a habit of accuracy, a habit of thoroughness, studying something out to its end, a habit of, well, I'm going to throw in orderliness, especially when you're doing experiments.
Yeah, you can't jump to the end. There's steps that you have to follow.
Yeah, and you need to keep everything in its place so they aren't accidentally bringing in those influences by mixing when they're not supposed to mix.
I forgot that part of
Yeah,
it. The thing I needed for the experiment, you just wait right there, I'll go get it.
That's a good
That's
point.
not going to work very well.
Yes, yes. And even a habit of investigation, if you want to call it that. That's not one Charlotte mentioned, but there are many that are similar to that, that keeping that mentality of wanting to,
It's that curiosity.
yeah,
Why does this do what it does? Why does that happen that way? Why does that look that way? Those are all curiosity. Fueling that helps us see the world in a very different way.
yes. Yes, it's a habit of thinking. And I can see how that is tied to the atmosphere and how your attitude can either encourage that habit of thinking, of curiosity, or can squelch it.
Yes.
So those two go hand in hand. All right, let's talk about the life component, the living ideas that are presented as you're doing science lessons.
Well, I personally think that science is exciting. There are so many different branches of science. And it's just intriguing to me as we study different things. And now, because there are so many different branches, you do not, and your child does not have to be interested in every single one of those. There are so many of them. I particularly like the branches in biology. Somebody else might like astronomy. And so they like to study the sun and the moon and the stars and all those different things that many times are beyond me.
Okay.
Somebody might like chemistry. Somebody might like geology. There are just so many different types of science and sub-branches within those major branches. So biology, you have botany, you have zoology, you have, even beyond that, you might just study just trees or one particular animal. And so it scales up or down. And within those, there are so many different things that you can study and learn about. And so for me, that's, there's so much. If your child doesn't like one science, find another one. They're all
It reminds
out there.
me of when you're doing art instruction, that we always encourage people to try different types of art media,
Yes.
Try sculpting, don't just stick to pencil drawing. You can do pastels, you can do, all these other
Yes.
types, charcoal and all this. And that's what I'm hearing from you. Don't just try one thing of science and say, that wasn't interesting, throw out science. there are many possibilities. And it's interesting to me as you say that, and you can start to see this mental picture unfolding of all the branches and the sub-branches and how it just keeps going and going and going, that God made that. And
Yes.
there's never an end to what you want to study. Even if you go to just the tip of one branch and I'm studying just this one particular species and even a subspecies, I'm never going to get to the end of that.
Correct.
The possibilities of ideas I can gain from that
Yes.
study.
It amazes me that there are scientists who have been studying the same thing, the same organism, or the same very narrow part of science for
Decades.
their entire career.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's still things they don't know. And so, your child is never going to know everything about every branch of science or even one branch of science because I don't think we can. Now, science is all around us also. It's within creation, what God made. We open our eyes, you look out the window, you see science. Nature is very much science on display before our eyes. And so getting to know more about that really helps us to appreciate God's creation more and God more. Because we see displayed within creation many of the attributes of God. His power, even his love for us within the different things that he gives us through nature, his creativity. All of those are on display for us to discover.
When you were talking about open your eyes and it's all around you, we see God's creation out the window, but it also reminded me of your son, my son-in-law, who loves the science part of cooking.
Yes.
He's just intrigued with that. And that's another way that you can see. You can see God's wisdom and surpassing knowledge in the way that the chemistry of cooking actually happens.
Yes.
Who
when you
thought of
put
that?
different ingredients together, you get this result.
And when you heat it up or cool it down to certain temperatures,
Yes.
you get this result. And it's just fascinating. So even in cooking, I mean, maybe
Yes.
your child wants to become a chef. That's science.
It is. It certainly is. It certainly involves chemistry and understanding how things react and interact with each other beyond and other things, heating, cooling, all of that.
Yes.
It may even involve some biology if you're using fresh ingredients.
True. That is true.
But even gardening, I mean,
Yeah.
there are so many different ways that we can use science and see science around us in just our everyday lives. You don't have to have a laboratory and the white coat and test tubes and all those different things that, people think of when they think of science. You can do it with minimal equipment. You can get other equipment if you are interested in that so that you can see more or do more. And so it can scale up or down.
But it's
and
all
that
around
sort of
us.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah. When you said heating and cooling, I was thinking, if they want to be an air conditioner mechanic,
Oh, yes.
that's science. A plumber, that's science. There's so much.
Yes.
It's all
I
around
said
us.
it's all
You're
around
right.
us.
Yeah.
It is all around us.
Yeah, that is
Yes.
a grand idea to give our children as they're
Yes.
studying it. Any other ideas that come to mind? Living ideas?
I think that studying science helps us to think critically about things that we read or things that we see in films or whatever. So often we take things at face value without thinking through them. But when you learn to think in a scientific way, questioning, wondering, observing, you're going to think more critically about different things that you see that may not even be science related, but just things as they are said, they're talked about, whatever. You're going to think more critically about those because you have disciplined yourself in that way in your study of science.
So that's tied into the discipline of good habits. Charlotte talked about the habit of thinking. And that's what it sounds like you're talking about. And thinking purposefully and intentionally
Yes.
and logically, step by step, does this hold true?
Yes.
Those are great ideas. So much is involved in education is an atmosphere, a discipline, a life. Just in teaching science, and that's involved in all of the subjects as well.
Yes.
So it's such a rich education. Thanks so much for helping us see those things in science. If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.